Aloha mai kako. Aloha e nā hoa e nā wahine. Mahalo for joining us. Sorry. Mahalo for joining us this evening. ʻAha Wahine, Kūhinapapa. I am Jamie Miller and so happy to be a volunteer with ʻAha Wahine. We have an exciting evening for you tonight. Besides myself, Napua Casson Fisher will also be hosting. So she and I will be going back and forth with providing some information and welcoming you folks and then closing out. So I got a couple of announcements before we bring on our esteemed guests. We want to thank all of our partners and our sponsors that you see here on the screen who have made this series possible and continue to support us. A big shout out to Hawaii People's Fund, who have just steered us in the right direction as far as supporting this webinar series. So we really want to mahalo everybody on here. Tonight, we're really, really excited because we have Wahine Oiwi, who saw a need in the community and wanted to do something about it. You see here on the screen, 3 sisters, Nikki-Ann Yee, Jamie-Lee Kapana, and Brandy-Lee Yee. Tonight, though, we have Nikki-Ann and Jamie who will be joining us and sharing their organization called Ma'i Movement and sharing, what they learned and the experiences that they've had and how they've been advocating for young girls, women who maybe don't have certain things that they need during their time of the month. And so we thought it was so interesting, and we reached out to them and asked them if they would come and share a little bit about their organization with us, with all of us here. So I'm so happy to get to introduce them. They're going to share who they are and how this got started. And we're going to be taking questions via the chat if you're on Facebook, or if you join us through Zoom. We're going to be watching out for some questions or comments even. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Nikki and Jamie. Mahalo nui.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Okay, aloha. My name is Jamie Kapana, and I started Ma'i Movement along with my sisters Nikki-Ann and Brandy-Lee. We're so excited and happy to be invited to this webinar, and I can't wait to share more about who we are, how we got started, and how it's all going. I think this is such an important webinar because we can have conversations and learning opportunities in a safe space, bringing awareness of Indigenous people and their practices. This has been a driving factor for my sisters and I with Ma'i Movement, being Native Hawaiian women who are bringing awareness of period poverty in Hawaii. So we started Ma'i Movement with just 3 sisters, myself, Brandy in the middle, and then Nikki. And what started off with such a small group of us, we've been so happy to get more support. And this is, even though we're a small volunteer-run organization, we're small, but we're mighty.
Aloha, everyone. I am Nikki-Ann Yee, co-founder. We're so sorry that our other sister, Brandy, couldn't join us today. But as Jamie said, we all share in the excitement and, talking story with you all today to share, how we got started and, what we've been up to. So, mahalo for everybody for giving up their time and, just allowing us to uplift our stories and, share what's happening in Hawaii. Back to you, Jamie.
Thank you. So as Native Hawaiian women born and raised on Hawaiian homelands in Waimānalo, we've seen and experienced many hardships that local people, especially Native Hawaiians, have faced. Our mom died at a young age, and it changed the course of our lives. But in some ways, it brought us here. Ma'i movement is deeply personal for us. From the mission to fight inequities in our society, to the logo and the name that pays homage to our hula roots and the way we were brought up. We don't come from a nonprofit or a government background. We wanted to do something for our people, for the entire state of Hawaii. So we came together and we did something about it. We truly believe it's our kuleana to take care of the people of Hawaii as Native Hawaiian women in the forefront of a movement for the betterment of menstruators here, and also to be an inspiration for other Native Hawaiians and especially Native Hawaiian Wahine. So I'm sure you're wondering how three sisters without a nonprofit or a government background got started with the nonprofit. But it really just started because our sister Brandy, she was sitting in a community Zoom call kind of similar to this one. And it was a work call. And one of the presenters was the founder of a local diaper bank. She mentioned how she started with donation drives, and she remembered all the talks that she had with Nikki and how she wanted to start something similar in Hong Kong for refugee workers there.
So, back in 2018, I was actually, living overseas at the time. And I had read this article, which, I took a screenshot here. When pads are a luxury, getting your period means missing out on life. And this was an article about, girls and women in Tanzania that were not able to get period products. And, that was the first time that I had ever read about that issue. But, at that time I was 15 years living throughout Asia Pacific and Middle East. And, there were constant threats to basic needs, to human rights, things that that I had seen in my travels and from working there. And when I read about period poverty, it was almost like, a punch to the gut. Like, how can this, be something that is stopping girls, women, and anybody who menstruates from living full and productive lives? I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a menstruator myself. And my daughter was 9 at the time. Was 9 at the time. And I just thought, this is completely unacceptable. And so from that moment, I wanted to start, as Jamie shared, something, for domestic workers and refugees in Hong Kong. And I would often talk with my sisters about, my ideas of starting a nonprofit. But, before I could get it started, I ended up moving back to the continent. So I am actually sitting in Maryland. And when Brandy was on that call, this was back in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. Everything was, shutting down, everything had shut down. And Brandy was doing Native Hawaiian health for Queens on Hawaii Island. And she heard all these needs, all these community resources. And nobody was talking about period poverty. So, that's where the phone call, as we say, sparked the movement. Before I jump into our name, I should say that's also how we roped in our sisters. So Brandy was on Hawaii Island, I was in Maryland, and Jamie is on Oahu and Kapolei. And we knew that, we were stronger together, and that we did need our sister on Oahu to support operations. So after, we started with the basic planning of the organization, we called Jamie up and said, hey, we have this crazy idea. Do you want to join us? And, maybe she was a little bit crazy, a little bit naive, like all of us, but she said yes. And that's how Ma'i Movement started in October of 2020. Now, one question that we always get asked is, how did you come up with your name, Ma'i Movement Hawaii? Well, let's start with Ma'i. This is a Hawaiian word. it was used by our grandmother, our mother, our aunties, cousins, and other Hawaiian female around us. In our family, it didn't carry a negative connotation. I would say that we were brought up in a very period positive environment. As Jamie shared, we grew up in hula, and there was always, a focus, a reverence around wahine, and we never felt any kind of shame with ma'i. In fact, that word to us was more used as slang, like in English, how you say period, rags, or, even on flow. And the word ma'i in Hawaiian can also mean different things, right? Including menstruation. So it can be illness, where some people feel that it carries, negative connotation. Also in Hawaiian chants, even in hula, it refers to genitalia. But for us, we wanted a word that all locals could understand. We even have non-Hawaiian friends that are familiar or aware of that word. So it was, about recognition. The word movement, by definition, it is a series of organized events working toward an objective. And what we wanted was, to create an organization that was entirely focused on addressing menstrual inequity and period poverty. And we wanted to create something that the people of Hawaii could rally around. Also, I'm a fan of alliteration. So, Ma'i movement sounded very nice. It went with the flow. And Hawaii, of course, because our organization, we wanted it to 100% serve the people of Hawaii. Jamie, did you also want to add in here?
Yeah, so thank you. I know for myself, hearing that people have, I guess, a negative response to ma'i, I feel like us having that as our name, we're changing that narrative, and we're trying to change the way that just a word is perceived. And for myself, I know that it's kind of my own special meaning behind ma'i movement, because I know that it can sometimes be looked down upon as like a dirty word or whatever it may be. But for myself, I love our name because we're changing that narrative for those that may think otherwise or differently from us. But yeah.
And, at the end of the day, we believe that you can call your period anything that you want. I know in the ʻOha Haumea report, they refer to it as ʻAha Wahine. There are other terms for menstruation in Hawaiian, like hanawai, kahe, waimakalehua, mahina. And just like the way anybody takes care or malama their ma'i, right? If you use pads, tampons, reusable or disposable, whatever you are comfortable with. And so, how you want to call your period, your ma'i, how you want to take care of it, that is something that you should be empowered with, and something that is very, very personal. Now, I know as we've been going, through our presentation already and talking, we're throwing around period poverty, menstrual inequity, and some people may be joining us and say, what are they talking about? So, before we move on further, I just want to explain and define what is period poverty. Now, as the name suggests, it is the inability to access menstrual products. Poverty, primarily everybody thinks, socioeconomic, financial constraints. And that is absolutely one of the main factors, right? If you don't have enough money to get basic needs, then you don't have enough money to buy period products. But there are other factors that contribute to period poverty, and that's lack of education, whether that's at home or in school, feelings of cultural or societal shame and stigma. So you can even think, when you go to the bathroom, I know I'm guilty of doing this. For a long time, I would take a pad or a tampon, whatever I was using, and if I needed to change and I was out in public, I would hide it in my pocket, stuff it in my shirt. I didn't want anyone to know that I was on my period. And, where does that come from? Where do these feelings like we need to hide this very basic part of, our biological functions? Another contributing factor is not having a sanitary place to maintain hygiene, lack of running water. When I first read that article, it was about, girls and women in a developing country with limited access to clean water. And I thought, oh, this is probably just happening there. But think about, our own islands, our rising houseless population, excuse me, what are they doing to maintain hygiene during their period? So, these are all issues that are intertwined with period poverty. It's not just one factor. There are gender injustices, so socioeconomic, racial factors, all of it, coming into play. And as we know, it was just completely exacerbated by the pandemic, and it disproportionately affects girls, women, mahu, trans men, gender non-conforming and non-binary people, those of low socioeconomic status, houseless, and in prisons. So because of all these different factors, we knew that, when we started Ma'i movement, we needed to approach the issue from a multi-pronged way as well. I'm going to hand it back to Jamie so she can share more about how we're trying to tackle the issue of period poverty.
Thank you. So my fancy title is Operations Director, but if we get down to it, I run the day-to-day operations on Oahu. That includes kit making, donation or distribution drives, mailing out kits, and anything else we have planned for Oahu. But one of those ways that we help is through services. But I just wanted to share a little bit about our kits. So we actually have two types of kits. We have our disposable kits, and then we also have our sustainable kits. I'll talk a little bit about our disposable kits now, and I'll let Nikki share later about our other kit. But when we brainstormed and got together to decide what we wanted to put into our care kits, as three sisters, we talked about how we each have our own different periods, our own lives, and how we care for them. But we wanted to make sure that we all got together, and when we put these kits together, we took into account all of these things. So in our kits, our monthly care kits, we have our day or regular pads, we have night or overnight heavier pads, and then we also have liners. But we wanted to make sure we added in tampons for our houseless individuals because we knew that they preferred it, because it was cleaner and easier to dispose. And also we made sure that we added in wipes because, sometimes it's not easily accessible for them to find running water or somewhere to clean up. So we wanted to make sure that we had all of those in our kits. We also have them in our Ziploc bags, and on those bags we have our label, which we also have QR codes on them, so that when we give them out, or even if we give them to other organizations, if an individual needs to request another kit, they can just scan that QR code. But we've been so lucky to be able to distribute over 300,000 period products. We've partnered with 35 other organizations. We've partnered with 25 schools, 3 correctional centers, and we sent out almost 4,000 care kits. And then in these pictures, it's really awesome because we are huge fans of posting as much as we can on Instagram. And then we find that we're able to spread more awareness that way also. But yeah, that's one of the ways that we help. But distribution drives are also important to us because we get to partner with other organizations like Family Promise, Hawaii Food Bank, Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, PAC, and Family Hui, but the list goes on. Our nonprofit work has also fashioned its way into my quote unquote day job. I work for Starbucks, and we've been so lucky to receive support from them, not only with like kit makings, but like locally, but we've also gotten some kits sent to us from Seattle. So that was really fun and interesting. Distribution drives are also really exciting because I don't know if you see it in one of these pictures, but my son, he tags along when we go to a lot of our distribution drives. And it's really fun to see my son being able to build his confidence in helping out within his community, but also that we're helping to break down the stigma of, you know, having normal period talks. And then also in the picture with Auntie Blanche, she has a houseless community in Waimānalo. It's so awesome to be able to give kits to them also, or products. And that was when I met her and I found out that she actually got donations from The Rock, and I gave her my number because I wanted to also try to meet him. But so it's fun for us to make those connections within our community, just from these drives that we do, and we get to partner with others. And then I think the last thing I was going to talk about was our donation drives. It's also a key part to what we do because it allows us to collect products for those in need, as well as we get to build relationships with those in our community. We're so lucky because we've recently gotten donations of made kits from Bank of Hawaii and First Hawaiian Bank. And it's so helpful, especially for a small nonprofit like our own, because these kits that they've helped and put together have really helped us get those requests of like 100 to 200 in and out. And it's been so awesome to get their help. But we're also super lucky because we have 2 permanent donation sites on Oahu, and it's been really helpful for us. Also, Starbucks has really helped too because they have donation drives that they do every so often. So it's nice to see it when, you know, you're going in and get coffee and they have little donation drives for us also.
And that's really cool because that has, you know, also normalized the conversations around menstruation. I know, you know, we've had people that reach out to us and, you know, they say, I was just going to get my morning coffee. And then I look and I'm like, why are there period products next to Starbucks coffee cups? And that really opens up, you know, a conversation because, you know, what we really wanted to do, you know, of course, address the need or, you know, anybody's need if they cannot access period products, but, you know, breaking down, you know, the shame around menstruation. And if it's out in the open, you know, if we have space like tonight where we can talk about it, you know, without any kind of, you know, feelings like we need to hide or, you know, speak in euphemisms, you know, in code words, you know, then that's also very liberating. And, you know, what has been incredible too is, you know, in addition to the donation drives that Jamie talked about, we've had students, you know, from elementary through universities, you know, that have also held donation drives. Some of the products came to us, some of them, they used it to, you know, put period products throughout their schools or donate to, you know, their favorite local organizations. So, you know, that has been really incredible to see in all of this work is, you know, how the work has had a ripple effect. And, you know, it goes back to our name, movement, right? That's what we wanted to start, a movement of people that, you know, we can get these conversations going and, you know, then they can carry on. Jamie, did you want to add anything else before I take it to the Sustainable Money Program?
No, thank you. You say it so well.
So, you know, when we started our work, you know, we started off with the ma'i care kits, and those are the packs of disposable products. As Jamie said, anybody can request it directly on our website. Although a majority of the products, do go through partner organizations or through distribution drives. But, it was very important to us that we also try to increase accessibility as much as possible. So that's why, one of our volunteers, Lee, she has been incredible in supporting us. Whenever anybody makes a request on our website, we will mail packs out to them directly. We grew up in Waimānalo and Hawaiian homelands. We have witnessed, we've experienced the struggles that local people face. And, we know that not everybody may get support through government assistance or through partner organizations, but it doesn't mean that they don't need help. So, that was really important for us when we were developing our programs. One thing we do believe is that we can make change through systemic ways, in our communities, in our government, and I will talk about our advocacy in a bit. But you can't always wait for government to take action. So one of the solutions to period poverty is through sustainable products. And so we created a program with reusable products, so period underwear, cloth pads, and menstrual cups. Now, when you start an organization with three sisters, as Jamie said, we had a lot of discussion even about our care kits, and it became very apparent that we all malama our ma'i very differently. And I will say it loud and proud. I'm the sister that has tried every single product. I mix and match with reusable, with disposable. I'm always trying to convert my sisters. But once I started using reusable products, I really saw that there was, a change in, of course, financial. It's just like, if you have your Hydro Flask, or, you use tote bags instead of plastic, you aren't spending money, to buy water bottles. So there's a financial benefit. It's also better for the aina, and it's also better for your body. And that's the same for reusable products. But what we realized, and even this was just conversations with my sisters, and even just my own experience making the jump to reusable products, is that there is an education barrier, right? Some people, they may not even have heard about, these products. Maybe they only heard about the cup, or they're like, how does the underwear work? Or cloth pad, is it like a diaper? Is it like depends? So there's an education barrier. There's also an access barrier. You're not going to find these products in the Mel's Market that's down the road, the small, mom and pop store that's open till 7 o'clock that you can walk to. There's also of course, financial barrier. If you can't afford a box of pad or tampons, even though reusable products in the long run are more cost beneficial, it's a big step, to pay anywhere from $15 to even $50, to buy that reusable product. So we said, okay, we want to create a program where we can, offer access to these products. But, like anything, we didn't want to just, throw products out there. There is an education that we wanted to deliver. So we created gender inclusive and locally inspired education with local medical professionals. As Jamie shared, we don't come from a nonprofit background. We don't work in government. We don't, work in the healthcare center, but we're very passionate about this topic. So, we hooied with OBGYNs, local pediatricians, child psychologists, RNs, and people of the sex, gender, and minority work groups, to make sure that we could present something that, any local kid could connect to. And, picture here, you can see our booklet, Hi. And all of the artists, all of the graphics in there were also from local artists. So that was really important for us to put there. And it was really interesting because when we did our pilot, 66% of the participants ended up changing to reusable products as their primary care of menstruation. And we got comments about, how they just felt so much better. And, it wasn't just about providing the product, but it was also about the education and openly talking about it. So the next part of our work is our advocacy. We have to provide services because, let's face it, periods aren't stopping for anything. It doesn't matter, your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter, if, we're in the middle of a pandemic, your period is something that you will have. So we had to provide, or we had to create programs, that could address that immediate need. But we knew real change had to come through advocacy. And, one main reason why I joined, even though, I'm so far from Hawaii, was that, when Brandy first called me, I said, that's crazy. I'm on the East Coast. How are we going to make this work? But it was a personal passion. And, once I started doing research, I found that there is basically a data black hole in Hawaii, right? There was no single organization and no local organization that was focused on period poverty. So, that's where we came together and we say, how can we help? And, our mom raised us to be, not only supportive of each other, to take care of each other, but, something we learned from her, from our, hula and Native Hawaiian culture is to take care of our land and everybody on it. So that deeply resonated with us, in spite of what may appear as, roadblocks. And so we said, okay, there's no data around period poverty, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So we started to collect, our own information so that we could get a better understanding of, who's affected by it and how they're affected. We also got involved in legislation. So, we also want to tackle the problem at all levels, at federal, at state, and at the county level, so that we can make change throughout. And what we found, just in our own initial findings, so, this October is actually just going to be our second birthday, our second anniversary as an organization. But, already from the beginning, the statistics were quite telling. 47% of our recipients identify as Native Hawaiian, 23% identify as other Pacific Islander, and 2 in 5 individuals that we serve are under the age of 18. 65%, are on some type of government assistance, but it was really interesting because 35% were not. And that goes back to, you look at what's happening in Hawaii, not everybody, even though they're working multiple jobs, they may not be qualifying, for government assistance. Programs like SNAP and WIC, you cannot buy period products or other basic hygiene, like even toilet paper. So, this is helping us as well because it frames the problem and how we can tackle it. We were very fortunate at the end of last year. We partnered with the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. So they are a federal feminist government agency. And, we released the first report of its kind, an official report on understanding period poverty in Hawaii. And, the results just showed us how prevalent the problem was. Respondents said that 50% of them miss school or work, and nearly 30% experience difficulties obtaining products. Main factors, it goes back to what I talked about before, right? Cost, lack of education, accessibility. So maybe the closest store, to them doesn't carry it. If you think about our islands, geographically, it's also very diverse. So, you have places on Hawaii Island, for example, that are very rural. So, if you get your period in the middle of the night, what do you do? If the store closest to you isn't open or you don't have transportation to get there. And shame and stigma was also a common theme in barriers. Now, what we saw also was that, nearly 85% believe menstrual equity is a real problem, like food and housing security. If you don't have products, how do you go to work? How do you go to school? And so, this is where, we really started to see themes, that were coming through in our report. And I highly encourage, and anyone that wants to learn more about the issue, you can go to our webpage, it's linked there. You can look up this report and, read it as well. And, one thing that we also explored with the commission, right, what were the driving factors? And, it did come down to, right, like, how do we have period poverty in Hawaii? And, like I shared, period poverty is a passion of mine. So I also looked at it, or, I had researched it before, what happened, in other countries with other religions. And there were also common themes of what happens in Hawaii. And, there's colonization that plays a role, there's religion, and there's patriarchy. Some of them, there are some overlaps, right? Like when we think about colonization, settlers and missionaries, when they came to Hawaii, they wanted to demonize ancestral belief and practices. If we just think about our own language, their attempt, to prevent us from speaking our own language. And that was a way for them to control, suppress, and erase. And this was something that happened with European colonizers all over the world. In a religious context, the biblical treatment of menstruation, is in contrast to what was believed Native Hawaiian views. And, there is limited information, unfortunately, about our own Indigenous practices, but there is absolutely a revival, that we've seen. And, there's a lot more research that is going, into what were practices. But I think, regardless of that, there is, just like our language, just like many of our practices, there is a revival. And, as Jamie shared as well, also reclaiming, the positivity around it, because menstruation was viewed in a very positive, sacred and, sacred time. So it is important for us to acknowledge that. And, patriarchy, the system of gender, the system and structure of gender inequality between men and women. Now, some of this, it does also intertwine with each other. And it is quite heavy, quite deep. So I do encourage you all to, go through the report, read through it, and of course, reach out to us and, let us know your thoughts. The commission is an incredible organization that does work to support women, mahu, gender non-conforming individuals across many issues. So, it was just such an honor to explore all of this with them. And leading us to, where we really focused a lot of work this past year. When we started out, we just had stories, there was anecdotal evidence of what was happening, but we knew that we wanted to take care of our most vulnerable population, and that was our keiki. So 3 years ago, a teacher from Ilima Intermediate School, had introduced legislation to make period products free. And at that time, we were not an organization, but by the second year, we were, and we jumped into it. And questions that we got were, is this really happening in Hawaii? This is legislation that has passed on the continent in a few states, but not many. And what we did, the bill didn't go anywhere the second year. It was quite heartbreaking, but we were also dealing with the pandemic, and there was a huge deficit in the budget. But we regrouped, and in the interim, we did a pilot across 6 schools, and we found that 8 out of 10 students had difficulties getting period products, and because of that, they weren't going to school. They were leaving. They were, they did not feel emotionally, mentally, physically supported. And even within the first semester, right, of us providing period products, there were improvements in absenteeism, in previous barriers like embarrassment. Those barriers were being decreased because students now had products everywhere, and they were just desensitized, of course, to conversations around menstruation. But what was incredible, of course, was the bill passed. It made it through the legislature in the third year. And on June 20th, it was signed into law. So, here I just wanted to share some pictures of, our efforts, with the students of Ilima. And, the last 2 years has been truly remarkable because, we really advocated alongside together. And we just saw, other students from private and public schools coming together, community members just really rallying around. And we were really lucky, that we could testify at the Capitol in person, towards the end of the session, and just to have all of our family there together. So as of, July 1st this year, period products are free in all public and charter schools. So that is K through 12. So, really that is, it was a big part of our focus, but also efforts, but it doesn't stop there as well. There are still other women, other gender non-conforming individuals, and we want to tackle other issues that are happening in prisons and houses, shelters. And our ultimate goal would be to make Hawaii the first state to make period products free everywhere, because it is a basic need, like toilet paper, like soap. Nobody questions that. And I just want to leave you, with a few thoughts. People always ask us, like, what can you do? What can we do? How can we support? We say we want to advocate for systemic change, similar to what we did, passing legislation, but it doesn't even have to be that big. Some people have the heart for it, but change also can start with you and in your ohana. So, like Jamie, her son, he packs kits, he hands them out. When you can start to normalize, those conversations within your own family, not hiding, a basic biological function that happens to half the population, you will have that ripple effect. And, of course, anybody, they can get involved with us, they can reach out. On this slide, we have, links to our website, all of our social media, and our email. I just talked a lot. So Jamie, did you want to add anything else?
No, I just thank you for having us here. Nikki says it all so well. She loves data. But I think now we're just opening up for questions.
Mahalo nui for your presentation. This is my first time hearing you folks speak. I only follow you on Instagram, and so it was very nice to hear your inspiration for starting your organization and how you've been continuing your mission throughout these years in COVID. We have a few questions in the chat. Let's see, where's the first one? I think you kind of already talked about this, but are your schools in Hawaii required to provide free period products to students?
Yes, they are required by law. And, this was also something that we advocated for, which was really, great because the legislators did support. There is a $2 million funding to ensure the mandate is implemented. So this should be available in all K through 12 and public through charter. I will say that, I have also been working with the DOE because this is the first year that the law was passed. And so I know, like right now, we are still trying to work, or they are still, trying to work out the kinks, ensuring that, the schools are purchasing. But, our kuleana as well is to follow up and make sure it's being done. So I can drop a link in the chat if there are any, students or teachers that are on here that are like, hey, she's saying we have products, but I don't see anything in my school, because, I am also putting together kind of like implementation task hui to make sure that, all 290 something schools have their products.
Nice. You did mention that when people ask how can they help, working towards systemic change is a goal. But if someone wanted to start or have a donation drive in their community, how can they go about that?
So we do have, some resources on our webpage, myemovement.org/donate. If you want to support My E-Movement, we have a DIY care kit overview of how you can pack kits. This was something that was really helpful, during the pandemic. A lot of people wanted to support, but do it safely from home. So we would give them this sheet and they could just order things off, pack it, and send it to us. Like that's how, Jamie said we got things from Starbucks on the continent. We also have had organizations like First Hawaiian Bank and Bank of Hawaii that will come together, fundraise, and then make kits. And our kits do go statewide. We mail out directly, but we also work with a nonprofit of pilots. So we actually just sent, like 200 kits to Maui for a drive this weekend there. So, it goes all over. But, if you want to just support your own, like if there's a houseless shelter near you, you can, collect period products, with your hui. Every year we have a statewide campaign, Malama Your Ma'i, to raise awareness around period poverty, raise donations. But, we see a lot of people on Instagram just coming together, doing Instagram fundraising, or just saying, hey, come here, drop off period products, to my house. And then, from there, donating it to, organizations. We have also set up boxes. So like Jamie said, we have one in Kaimuki Superette, but we've also done it in gelato stores, actually basically anywhere, anywhere that would agree to. So, I really think the sky's the limit when it comes to, creating a donation drive. But head to our website and you can download some resources.
We have Jeannie, who is a home-based intervention specialist, and she was wondering if you folks go to Hawaiian charter schools and organizations like Tutuini and women's shelters for education and outreach.
Yes, so she's on Hawaii Island. Yes, we have, when Brandy was there, she was reaching out, to more, to different organizations there. So, we have partnered with quite a few, here and there, but basically anybody that reaches out to us, we will support. So, Jeannie, if you want to get in touch with us, please send me an email and we're more than happy to support. We have worked with many different organizations, clinics, shelters. So anybody that has a menstruating individual, we will help them.
Along the lines of the shelters, have you done any work in women's correction centers yet?
Yes, we have. So we have donated to 3 correctional facilities. So 1 on Maui, 2 on Oahu. And we have, been trying to understand more, the situation of women and how they deal with their periods while incarcerated. Now, there is research, there are articles, but that's primarily from the continent. And what we want to understand is, what's going on locally. When we have, spoken with supervisors or whoever, is in charge of purchasing the products, they do say that there is a budget, but again, if their budget got cut, which it did happen at one point, community organizations like us had to step in. What is also, an issue to us is that, in the commissary, panty liners, for example, are 3 times what you would pay outside. And, inmates in there, they may make at most 25 cents an hour. So, how is that just and how is that fair, for them to get products that they need?
And Jamie, you had any mana'o about the correctional facilities to tie in, or any other questions?
You're absolutely correct, Nikki, about, that's the pulse of it right there, that if you wanted to have your own personal type of preference of period product and you'd purchase it, it costs a lot of money. And so, already outside, it's expensive, right, for just a normal person. So yeah, imagine inside where you don't have that resource. I think that would be something that maybe to tack on to the legislation that you guys already have gotten approved and into law, that that could, maybe I would love to work on that with you folks, with my organization, and I'm sure other organizations would like to actually bring equity to this issue within the criminal justice system, even for girls, right? And so there's other facilities too. So you mentioned that you worked with 3, but there's other facilities, at least 2 more that house women, and so yeah, I think that we should pick up on the momentum that you folks have started. I have a question in regards to this movement here locally, and it being inspired from a global article. Can you talk a little bit maybe about contrast and compare like what's happening here in Hawaii as opposed to on the continent and worldwide around period poverty? Like, where are we? Are we kind of up and up, or are we ahead as a society here in Hawaii, etc.?
Well, of course, I'm going to say we're up and up. No, when we started out, there were already organizations internationally and on the continent that were doing the work. And, a big part of me also, starting this with my sisters, we were all raised, we're all local girls. But, one thing that I wanted to bring, right, is that even though I left home, many years ago, like my heart has always been home. I go home all the time, talk to my family all the time. But I was like, what can I give back, with all this experience overseas? How can I help, Hawaii? And so when we started a movement, I, connected with, organizations. So like in Aotearoa, right, our cousins there, they already passed legislation to make period products free in schools. And that was the same year we started. So I connected with a nonprofit that was instrumental there. And I said, okay, can you please share your mana'o? How did this process work? Because, a lot, what we've noticed, trends in, other states and internationally is that, it starts with schools, right? And from there, then you're able to make change in other areas. And like Scotland, for example, they recently made the news. So 2 years ago, they passed legislation to make period products free everywhere. And they're the first country to do it. But, just a couple of weeks ago, that law went into effect. And that's something that, I would like to do for our state. At the moment, there is no state that is doing that, but like New York, for example, they are providing products in schools, in houses, shelters, and in prisons. But this is, what I've learned in my work with the legislation is that's an unfunded mandate. So if there's no money to do it, then it doesn't get done. And Hawaii really was the first state to not only mandate it, but really back it up with money. And, the recommendation throughout the session was 1 million. And by the end of the session, they doubled that to ensure that, no keiki would have to go without products. And, I will say from our work in the ledge, I've started to see, other mini movements happening. So, the students that we worked with, as I shared, they come from private and public schools. And I know this year, like Kamehameha, Punoho, Iolani, they're all working towards, making period products free in their schools. At the Capitol as well, we worked very closely with the Senate president. And I had a conversation with him. I said, hey, we're working on this legislation with the schools. What about in the Capitol bathrooms? So I know they've also installed dispensers in the bathrooms at the Capitol. And, there are conversations about how do we expand this to other government buildings. And, we're also working on a pilot with Mayor Kawakami to see, can we put free period products in public county parks? And, how does this look? How does this work? And, we're always working towards that goal of making period products free everywhere.
Nice, mahalo. I really enjoyed listening to your folks' story and how you made this happen, and it was based on the relationship that you have as sisters. I think that almost every section of your presentation and the questions that we provided, you touched on that, and I think that is so beautiful, and it speaks volumes about how you were raised, and how you continue to give back to the lahui. Yeah, we're coming down to the end. Maybe just one quick question. Where do you see your guys' organization in 5 years? And then also 2 questions, sorry. And then, what do you guys do for self-care? We ask everybody that.
Ooh, Nikki, I don't know. Where do you see us in 5 years? I remember when we started, we had a goal to just end period poverty in Hawaii. And I can't remember the end date that we had on it, but I feel like in this last year, we've already accomplished so much. So I feel like this is a question we get, and I'm not sure how to answer it. Because I feel like there is so much to tackle, but you probably know.
Well, okay, so the end date Jamie's talking about is there's a global end date for period poverty, and that is 2030. So, when we started, I had that date 2030, in my mind. But, what I always tell people, half joking, half serious, I said, I want to work ourselves out of a job. I want to be to the point where there is no need for ma'i movement. Now, with that being said, there's always need for education, that aspect. But, what we want to bring Hawaii to is the point where, as I've shared many times, to make products free and available to anybody that needs it anywhere. But just to have such, to break down all the shame and barriers. So yes, we will be out of a job. Nobody will talk to us anymore. And this recording will go into the archives.
Well said. And then for self-care, for myself, I enjoy spending time with my family and my pets, and I also enjoy working out. What do you do for self-care?
When we can, we like to go camping here. It's one way to just disconnect from everything, de-stress, especially during the pandemic when we were, inside all the time, or, that's one place where you can feel free and be one, with nature, with my family. So we love camping. And then I also, when I can, like Jamie, like to exercise and run. I used to love boxing, but I haven't been back in a minute.
Mahalo. Mahalo for sharing. And mahalo for joining us this evening to presenting to us ʻAha Wahine and the viewers out in Zoom land and Facebook Live. It's what, 2 o'clock over there in Maryland? 2 a.m. So thank you for staying up with us. And I've seen some other people, other viewers on the continent joining us this evening too. So I'm sure it's late where you are as well. I will just do a few announcements and mahalo to wrap us up. Mahalo again to our sponsors, Hawaii's People Fund, Papaolelo Kahi, OEV TV, Ekolomenui, the University of Hawaii, Ho'olu Aina KKV, and Mailiku Kahi Aina Momona Academy. We have a Facebook and an Instagram page, and also our website where you can get updates on upcoming webinars. And you can also access all of the recordings on our website. ʻAha Wahine Kūhinapapa is a part of the ʻAha Ohana. ʻAha Ohana is a multi-generational online virtual gathering. It's going to be September 16th to the 18th, so not too far from now. The theme is Kapu Kahaloa, and there's going to be a lot of webinars and virtual offerings and events surrounding health, wellness, culture to Malama Ohana. And so you can stay connected by going to the website and the Facebook and Instagram, or you could do a quick QR code shot right there to register. We don't have an announcement a visual announcement of our webinar for next month, but we will be having the Wahine of Kealo Piko, and they're going to be sharing about their brand and their business and how they have come to become a very well-known and respected Wahine-owned business. And we will also be launching in September our sponsorship program, and all of the information will be available on our website. That's on top of our screen. But this sponsorship is it's going to be an online application for community members or groups to receive sponsorship funds to support their community events, trainings, and workshops that would align with one of these 4 categories. The 4 categories includes cultural learning, spiritual support, skills training, or entrepreneurial guidance. The sponsorship amounts will be between $300 and $1,000 per event or offering. And so the link to the application and further information will be available beginning September, so next week, on our website and also on our social medias. And that ends our announcements. And thank you all again for joining us. We will see you next month at our next webinar. Mahalo nui. Aloha.